So I obviously mean this in a more comedic sense, but I truly believe that in some respects, the Knights of the Old Republic remake, and just the Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic brand in general, it's like they're cursed at this point. There were plans, you know, or ideas rolled around for a Knights of the Old Republic 3 way back, obviously. You have Star Wars The Old Republic, which has somehow clung on all these years. It continues to exist. But when it comes down to it, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic's remake, it's been kind of plagued by trouble. You had the whole situation around the remaster or re-releases of the games on Nintendo Switch, and those had a lot of problems, and now you have a confirmation that the game is still in development. It is still being made. Actually, in April 2024, Saber Interactive CEO Matthew Karch had confirmed that they were still working on it after the split with Embracer Group, saying, well, it's obvious that we're working on this. It's been in the press numerous times. What I will say is that the game is alive and well, and we're dedicated to making sure we exceed consumer expectations. But that said, we're now almost a year later, heard nothing about it essentially. And then finally there was a comment actually from Tim Willits, the Saber Interactive Chief Creative Officer, kind of reassuring people that it is still being worked on, saying Saber Interactive is one of the largest independent developers in the world. We are working on numerous games across many different genres. Everything that we have talked about is still in development. We will share information on upcoming games when we have something cool to share. So basically saying that it actually is still in development. Now that said, today I had been working already on something I thought was kind of fun regarding this. And when I say fun, I guess it's just interesting. And that is sort of the cursed development so far around the KOTOR series, whether it be the remasters or this remake, and kind of going through a timeline of troubled events that have occurred around this. So what I've done here is I've actually spliced together several old videos from my other channel, or the important parts of them, along with new audio that I'm going to be adding in to add context to and explain what has been going on with the KOTOR brand, what's going on with Star Wars here as an RPG medium, and what we can or cannot expect, basically with everything that's been happening. So, without further ado, I'm going to hop into it, but I do have a question of the day for you really quick, which is, what are your thoughts on KOTOR? What are your thoughts on Star Wars? Like, is this RPG, Knights of the Old Republic, 1 and 2, the remake of 1, all this stuff, is this something that is worth the hype? Is it something that people should expect a lot out of? I personally am kind of concerned about it at this point with all the things we're going to cover today. And also, I really do feel like when all is said and done, I'm sure they'll change the combat system. I'm sure they'll change the core of what the game is and keep the story. You know, it revolved around almost a tabletop dice feel that was going on with your stats in the background. So for me, that was a huge part of what KOTOR was. It wasn't just the story. It wasn't just the choices. It was also this tabletop-y animated RPG combat that was turn-based. And with them going to remake it and the trend of throwing that out, I'm not exactly sure what to expect after all of these hurdles. But I'm interested to hear your thoughts down below, and we'll kind of hop into all of them right now. In mid-September of 2021, there were a lot of things coming out about this game, especially around certain writers attached to the project, and this was back before it was with Saber Interactive. It was still under Embracer Group above that, and it was with Aspyr. Now, Aspyr went on to make some mistakes, especially regarding their re-release of Knights of the Old Republic 2, something we'll get into in a bit, but I want to take a look at how this was already troubled even with the original Aspyr release, right? Like with Aspyr working on it, there were already things going on behind the scenes that didn't seem like a good thing. So my wife Jill and I talked about it at the time. I'm going to include some snippets here of just the TLDR of it. And since then, it has obviously changed development studios. I'm sure it's changed writers. A lot has changed, but even then, it was troubled.
It doesn't really inspire a lot of faith to me that Disney wanted to get rid of Knights of the Old Republic originally. And most other remakes didn't have to deal with their original work being decanonized. The thing with Disney, though, is they have a track record with Star Wars of pissing off a lot of the fans, sometimes rightfully, sometimes not rightfully, and going back to things that they threw out of the canon like this to simplify their ability to tell new stories, like you said, and then just remake them and resell them for a profit again.
And we already know they're probably getting rid of the turn-based combat, because every single remake of a game that had turn-based combat in the original, they get rid of it.
That's something I didn't even think of, but that is very frustrating if so.
It's really annoying, because I really like turn-based combat. I think it's really fun, and I think it's really different. All of the new technical hardware says, oh, well, let's make it more modern and not have turn-based.
Because their idea is that younger gamers don't have time or patience for turn-based combat and think it's boring.
Yeah, but that's dumb, because a lot of people like thinking things out and like being strategic. They don't want to just have to mash X. Dude, I am so sick of Disney kidifying everything. You know what Disney does? They take things that were made for adults, and then they decanonize them, and then they remake them, and they make them PG. Instead of, you know, what they would have originally been. Because they're afraid of getting rid of that younger audience and not letting them buy their product. But in doing that, it makes the adult fans annoyed and sick of being treated like a child all the time and not being able to be fed these adult concepts in any good way. The thing I'm worried about with this game is, I know you're going to talk about her soon, but I was just going to mention her already. The Sam Maggs girl, like, working on it, she seems like she has a lot of ideals against what she calls the patriarchy and hating men, and is hating what I think would be like power dynamics between men. So if she has anything to say about the story, I feel like she's going to try and change it drastically, and make it more of a liberal kind of take and more of like a feminist based thing.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that it's hard to talk about and not hit the nail on the head, because this is a very left-leaning person. I would feel very much, by the way, the same way if someone came in, like, if they got like Donald Trump Jr. to come in and write this story. I don't think we need that.
Yeah, extremes on both sides are very troubling.
Well, and that's what I'm saying is, like, I just don't think that we need that. Like, even if you agree with Donald Trump Jr. or you agree with Sam Maggs on a lot of stuff, that's your prerogative, and I'm not going to tell you what to believe, but I think that once you start, when your entire mindset is sort of focused on just political things or power dynamics or group dynamics and racial things, and that's basically all you talk about all day, every day on Twitter, it's kind of then odd to see you getting really interested in writing this story, and I'm supposed to expect that you're not going to drag a bunch of your personal baggage into it. But when it comes to someone like Sam Maggs, I don't want her to not have a job.
No.
But when I see some of the stuff that she said in the past, it's very concerning. I think it's worth rolling and showing this clip that she was one of the people involved in all the Gamergate stuff back in the day, which was way before my time on YouTube. Before I mattered at all in any way, talking about how characters can be virtually penetrated on Grand Theft Auto, and how it is a triggering and traumatizing experience and all this crazy stuff.
It's a frightening and disgusting trend in the world of online gaming. Hackers rewriting code to simulate sexual assault.
Online, they can take your character, lock them in place, have made their character pantsless, and then can simulate sexual assault with your character, and you are helpless to stop it.
The graphics are so good, this attack is eerily realistic, but this is virtual rape. Hackers rewriting codes and hijacking online video games like Zombie Apocalypse and Grand Theft Auto.
And should not be allowed anywhere. Like, they should be banned off the servers immediately.
And Sam Maggs, an avid gamer and blogger, tells me in some cases these hackers, also known as modders for modifying the game, will talk to victims on their headsets during the attacks.
When you can hear the person on the other end who's saying these things directly to you, and they're saying them directly to you, that's a whole other level of harassment, really.
Sam Maggs stopped playing online over a year ago because of what she calls a misogynistic mentality that already exists in the world of gaming. And she says these new rape scenes only illuminate that.
It's violating, it's triggering for people who have survived assault in the past. It's a visual representation of all that terrible verbal stuff that you get as a woman online.
If anything like that ever happens to you in a game because of a hacker or something, There's this button that's on your screens. It's like a circle with like a line in it. It means on and off. You can press it.
There's also a cord in the wall. I found that when you pull the cord on a PlayStation or Xbox or computer, it shuts off.
And you need to take into consideration the fact that there are bad people in this world. There's always going to be bad people in this world who use things for evil, no matter what, even if it's just a game. And you have to try and remember that you're a good person.
Well, and I'd argue most of the people doing, because we did show that news clip, part of it here, I'm sure. Part of the thing with that, too, is it's people trying to get a rise out of you and troll you.
Yeah.
I don't think these are, like, angry, like, uh-oh touchers in real life. Like, these aren't people who would corner a woman in an alley and then assault her. These are people who are trying to like piss people off and like have a laugh. And
you shouldn't give them that power.
No, absolutely not. Sam Meggs, though, is the type of person who gives everyone offensive in any way a platform.
Which is wrong.
They all live rent-free in her head. It's freezing, but hating the patriarchy keeps me warm. This comment implying Luke Skywalker was a Gary Sue. Some of the worst professional experiences I've had involved white women with internalized misogyny doing the work of the patriarchy.
Which, like,
That's you, Jill.
That one in particular is kind of offensive to me, because, like, why am I not allowed to have a different opinion than you? Like, why do I have internalized misogyny all of a sudden? Or, for a couple of weeks ago video, why do I all of a sudden have internalized biphobia? Just because I have a different opinion than somebody. Why? I don't understand why I have all of these internalized things just because I have different opinions and I want to talk about them.
I think that people like Sam don't care, like, about what you just had to say or about what I have to say.
All she wants to do is call people names. That's it.
Correct. Yeah, like, she doesn't want to label them correctly. Even if someone is hateful, it's easier to try and spin them as a coward, like they're a phobe or they're a whatever, instead of educate them on something or talk to them or have a conversation. What I care about is just these constant takes where she's always angry all the time. Things like posting a picture of a shirt where it says Star Wars is for everyone, which all you have to do is do that. I agree with you. Star Wars is for everyone. But then her whole like post above it is, my aesthetic is die mad about it. It's like, how angry are you?
Yeah,
like, you're this hateful.
Why are you angry at so many people who don't even really exist or talk to you?
You know, and she also goes on, the biggest disappointments at studios are not the misogynists, but rather the good people in a place of privilege who refuse to risk their own jobs by standing up for their marginalized colleagues. It must be nice to have that choice. We don't.
But, like, here's the thing. She's a white woman. She's a white woman who's with a male partner.
Or at least was at one point from that tweet.
Because she mentions it. So she's either bisexual or pansexual or some other...
She is bi.
Not only does that make her a lot like me, where she is I don't like the word privilege, but a privileged white woman in a relationship with a man that the world supports.
Well, you're just using her language.
It's just like she's acting like she is a marginalized colleague when she's not.
I think she thinks she is because of the patriarchy, although I would say that if you are really this beacon of hope white savior that you claim to be, you probably shouldn't be talking about amplifying black voices, but then in a, similarly minded tweet later, talking about how oppressed you are as a white woman. Constant tweets about Trump, by the way. Trump lives in this woman's head rent-free.
Yeah, but she uses the emoji of an orange because she's too afraid to have the word Trump in her tweets, because she doesn't want Trump people to search up her tweets and be able to talk back to her, because she's afraid of hearing a different opinion.
Right, it's a cowardly tactic.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all it is.
Yeah.
Now, at the end of the day, they can never take the original Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic from me. I could be banned off of Steam and lose my PC copy of it. I still have it on Xbox, hard copy. So, like, I always have this original game. It's more just I'm not excited because of this, and I want to be proven wrong. I want this to come out and be amazing. Again, this is one of my favorite games of all time, but with things like new people working on it, especially Sam Meggs, things like how Disney has handled their canon and continuity in the past, it's hard for me to get excited about this game looking at all of this combined.
Well, one of my favorite games of all time got re-released on the Switch, actually digitally. Long story short, this game is being re-released after forever on modern technology. Alex is here with me today from Podcast Now. If you have not heard of him, he's in a lot of my videos and he runs a fantastic channel. I am so flabbergasted and annoyed. So to give you I'm going to give the smallest TLDR context setup, this game is from the early 2000s, all right? Original Xbox and PC. Even this old game, it does not run perfectly on PC unless you do a little finessing, right? So when this was getting announced for Switch, yes, there wouldn't be mods and stuff like that, but there weren't tons of them to begin with. So a lot of players were kind of thinking, oh, hey, this is my chance to go back, modern tech, replay through Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2. It has one of the best narratives ever. Some of the writers from Fallout New Vegas actually worked on it. There's a point in this game where you get to Onderon, and you actually crash into this planet with a ship, and then you proceed through the story from there. However, for a lot of players, they cannot proceed. The game is broken right there. There's nowhere else they can go. They are just stuck. And there is a workaround, I guess. I saw one player say they restarted their game 14 times, and on the 14th they got this to work. It's something that it really bothers me too, because if in the future, because they did say they will patch this, and they even admitted on Twitter, yeah, that makes this incompletable. They admitted that on Twitter. If they fix this, right? This is still the digital version of the game, okay? And if on the physical version that will likely ever come out, if it does, if this patch isn't included right in there, then there's going to be a version of the game floating around out there that can never be completed at all. And that's one of the things that really frustrates me about this, especially in the digital age, is if you go and you get disc-based, or you go and you get cartridge-based or whatever, the thought process is almost, we'll fix it later, but if you're one of the people who bought physical, here's the finger, because in a handful of years, maybe you can't fix it.
I think you and I are pretty much on the same page with we just want the game to come out and be like, okay, you know, like small bugs here and there, and of course, you know, as we go further on in time, as we're here, and I'm sure in the next, 10, 15 years, it's unavoidable to have something, you're going to have something wrong with the game at launch. But, how, great of an issue that is versus not so bad of an issue, that's where I think you and I are pretty much in agreement. This is not acceptable. I mean, now from what, you and I have gathered, it seems like this is something that's probably going to affect everybody, right? If you play this game on the Switch through this download, you are going to encounter it. Now, if you can get past, it depends on, how willing you are. I guess, Jay, I wonder if it depends on how in tune with the Force you are. Because maybe that person that did the 14 times, maybe they had more midichlorians or something. Most likely.
He was the chosen one.
Yeah, it was more. Yeah, it just had more midichlorians than the poor sap that couldn't get through it. But, I mean, yeah, that's not okay. That's not okay that it seems the only way. And I don't know any examples right now that come to my head, but I can think of in the past that there have been moments where something would happen with the game, and I would kind of just hope that turning the console off, turning it on again, restarting from the last save, the game would just power through, right? And sometimes it actually has worked like that. So it's not like it's never happened to me. It has. I'm sure it's probably happened to loads of people where you just kind of pray that the game can, overcome itself on like the next time you restart the console. But yeah, it's not okay that you have a game that comes out that you admit it. I mean, it's good you admit it. I respect them for admitting it, but you also shipped a game that, if everybody's going to encounter this, like the one person then countered on Twitter, like how many people are going to do that 14 times? How many people are going to try it 14 times until it works? I'd probably try 2, maybe 3, and then I'd give up.
The whole scare of the PS3 store shutting down, when that was happening originally, there were a lot of patches that were just not accessible to people. Like, people couldn't download PS3 game patches for a while, and some of them were just unavailable, and people thought, oh, this is going to be gone. And they were kind of starting to realize, like, oh, I might not have access to these patches forever on everything. You even see it now on something like the original Xbox and stuff, where if there were games that had DLC, unless those have been made backwards compatible on the Xbox One or Series X or S or whatever, you're not getting that content anymore from way back then. There is always the possibility this stuff goes away in the future. And so when you're re-releasing a game, I don't know, that's from over a decade ago,
it really should work. And I mean, when you're releasing any game, it should work. But like this one especially is so egregious because of when it came from.
I've always been kind of critical on Aspyr. Aspyr is the publishers of it. They do a lot of ports. I've actually played several of their Star Wars ports, and they're fine. They're nothing all that special. They are literally just trying to get the game to work on a system that it wasn't, made for. And that's kind of it. Now remember, these are also the people that are making the Knights of the Old Republic remake. I assume it's a different team than the ones that are porting over these games right now. But that's another thing to think about too. The quality that we've seen so far. How much is that going to relate to the quality we get of the remake, which probably is at this point, it's supposed to come out this year. At this point, it's coming out next year.
It does punish early adopters, and then you have these gaming companies. I'm not going to point out specifics here. We've seen this before where game developers, especially on Twitter, where they really go to let the aggression go. They'll talk about things like how people don't buy games at launch, or like a lot of people wait, and then the game doesn't make as much money, or it needs to make more money in microtransactions or DLC because people have like I'll play it later mentality. They'll do comparisons like, well, people don't feel that way about movies. And it's like, yeah, but most movies aren't getting patched. The problem is, if it's going to just be a better experience later on, there's no reason for you to spend $60, $70 on a product at all.
All it does is hurt that first wave of sales that sometimes they look to for bonuses, or they look to for like the publisher will look to feel good about the developers or the future of them or the future of like the next game. I mean, it's important what a game can do, say, in the first month. I mean, that makes or breaks, I would say, most games out now. You know what I mean? And all this really it just takes one of these experiences to hit you where you have this mentality where it's like, well, I don't need to buy a game day one anymore, right? So how many people is this Old Republic game going to do that to? Maybe 3, but those are 3 people forever that maybe, because they got a bad deal here, they're saying, well, I'm never buying a game day one ever again. And a lot of games do that to people, historically. It was worse. It was a lot worse. It's gotten better, but there's still things like this that pop up that, like you and I've said, it's just kind of scratching your head. Like, you'd think we were done with this kind of stuff, but we're not.
What's not good is the situation around Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2, the Switch, I would say, port of the game. A port that I wanted to talk about because we covered this a while ago. When it launched, there were a lot of problems with the game. And it has gotten some updates that have fixed some of the problems, but there has been one major, I would say, untruth told about this game from the start. One major promise that has yet to be fulfilled, and that is the promised DLC for the game. Now, some of you are probably going to think, well, DLC, who cares? Like, if the game's done, it doesn't matter, right? Well, here's the short end of it, and I will also give you a resource to check out if you want more background information. But essentially, when Knights of the Old Republic 2 was released, basically almost 20 years ago at this point, I believe it was like 2004 or 2005, that game was not done. Knights of the Old Republic 2 was not finished. Well, what happened? Why did it get released? Well, it was being pushed for a holiday release. Essentially what happened when it was coming out back then on Xbox and I believe PC at the time, it was being pushed early out so that it could meet demand for a holiday release and get a ton of sales capitalizing off the success of the first game. Now, what sucks about that is a ton of content was cut from the game. A ton. I'm talking a bunch of quests. I'm talking about an actual ending. Seriously, they scrapped most of the ending of the game. The DLC fixed a lot of this stuff. It was all kinds of content that was supposed to be in the game that has been restored by the community, and it is called the Sith Lord's Content Restored Pack, basically. I hope I got that right, because I'm, again, very tired. Might have gotten the name itself not completely perfect. But anyway, this was promised from the launch of the Switch version, which was handled by Aspyr Media. Aspyr is basically the treasure trove holders of old Star Wars gaming content. They are the ones who are usually responsible for porting it to more modern hardware. And honestly, they usually do a very good job. But Aspyr was also working on a little thing you might know of as Knights of the Old Republic Remake. And Bloomberg reported that they are no longer doing that. This was a while ago. They were shifted off of Knights of the Old Republic Remake. Now, there is a YouTuber that I watch who covers Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic sometimes. He's actually, very informative, very good. His name is Mr. Matty Plays, and he actually knew people within Aspyr Media kind of during the time when they were working on the actual remake, and he actually saw a little bit of the footage of that game. And he thought it was looking good. He has a few videos up about this situation with the remake and also Knights 2. So as a mega fan, he was thinking it was looking good. And I think the team at Aspyr was thinking it was looking good too. But now, as reported by Bloomberg, a handful of months ago, Aspyr is no longer working on Knights of the Old Republic Remake. So what does that have to do with Knights of the Old Republic 2 and its DLC? Well, this was promised for Q3 of 2022. We are way past that at this point. There has been no update on this DLC, none at all. And even worse than that, they removed the mention of the DLC from their YouTube trailer that they uploaded on their Aspyr YouTube page. If you actually go and check out the uploads of this trailer by things like Nintendo, and I believe also IGN uploaded the trailer, they have an extra 4 or 5 seconds at the end of the trailer promising that Sith Lords Restored content pack mod DLC for Switch. If you actually go to Aspyr's video of that, it no longer says that. It has been updated to remove mention of this DLC completely and kind of sweep it under the rug as in like, well, look, there's no promise here, but there was a promise here to deliver this content to players. So I guess the question is what happened here, and is this DLC still going to come out? Because this was actually really only caught now by The Gamer, the website. They actually published an article a few days ago talking about their theory on it, that the KOTOR 2 DLC has been quietly canceled. They have a whole article up about it that I'm going to link in the description down below because I think it's pretty interesting. Some of this cut content, by the way, was going to include things like entire areas, side quests, a whole character quest for basically a one of your companions, HK. This was going to include all kinds of stuff and a lot more of the moral choices and dilemmas that players love from this game, along with actually giving you an ending, because the ending in the original game is really abrupt and incomplete. This was going to be a very, very big update that was going to add a lot to the game and actually make it, I would say, worth playing on Switch. I'm going to be honest with you, the promise of this DLC is what made this worth playing on Switch, unless this was your only way to ever experience Knights of the Old Republic 2. Because this content mod is on PC and it does work on PC. But if you have the Xbox version of the game or now the Switch version of the game, you have no access to that DLC. And for the Switch version of the game, it's looking like you might never have access to that cut content on the Switch. So now, unless the Switch is your only way to play Knights of the Old Republic 2, not a dig, I'm being serious. Like, you're never gonna buy an Xbox. You don't have the original disc for that game. You don't buy it digitally there. You don't have a gaming PC, right? You don't buy it on Steam. I think it's on tablet too. Maybe you don't own a tablet. I don't own a tablet. Maybe you don't. So basically my point is, if Switch is your only way to play the game, cool. Then you get the base experience that everybody got at launch. Back on the Xbox original, a little bit of a glitch, issue, kind of off and on. One of them broke the entire game and made it so you could not actually progress. But a lot of those have been fixed over time, so you can still experience a good game as it was released. The problem is that restored content transforms KOTOR 2 from a good game into a fantastic game. So because of this, they are really toning down what this release was actually capable of. This is going to be a really big deal to a lot of people who I think they're hoping forgot about it, because now on their social media, when anyone asks about this, when anyone says, hey, where is the DLC? What happened to it? There's no mention of it. Nobody will talk about it. The social media people won't answer. There's no real update on the positioning of it. And it really sucks because, as Mr. Matty Plays said, I actually agree with him and his I would say educated guess on this. I think that once the development team at Aspyr was removed from the remake, my personal opinion is once that happened, I think that they were kind of removed from doing a lot of other Star Wars stuff as well. Because Embracer Group owns Aspyr, and this project was essentially shown to Embracer Group, the owner of Aspyr Media, and shown to Disney and PlayStation and all these people, right? And the report was from Bloomberg, essentially, they didn't like it. They didn't like what they saw, they didn't like what Aspyr was doing, and they pulled the plug on it and gave it to Saber Interactive. And now that history is being rewritten in a way, they're going back to the YouTube trailer and deleting out the part where they promised that DLC. That is just a very, very bad look. There were reports from Bloomberg, essentially that developers had, and I quote this from Kotaku, spent a significant amount of time and resources on a proof of concept demo that failed to pass the muster at a review meeting. After that, the report went on to say that senior leads were let go from the project, and then KOTOR was moved over to Saber Interactive in Europe, with Aspyr no longer handling it. And then there was a lot of stuff, going on with that we reported on too. There was an issue around Aspyr where they had promised a Knights of the Old Republic 2 DLC for the Switch version that never materialized, got canceled a little while ago, which we also talked about. Now you get to today, and just a couple of days ago, all of the tweets talking about this game from Sony and, all the things associating it with a PlayStation officially, gone. Those were now actually just scrubbed from the internet. They were deleted. And then, of course, there was an update the other day, which is why I waited to talk about this. And there was an update that basically a spokesperson for Sony said that the KOTOR remake trailer was delisted over licensing issues, saying, as part of normal business, we delist assets with licensed music when the licenses expire. But Kotaku pointed out here that the only music in the trailer was basically the main Star Wars theme, which is a Disney-owned theme, and there would pretty much be no reason for that to expire. They didn't point that part out. That's something that I just want to say, because it wouldn't make sense to have a license for a trailer for a year or two, and then that expires before there's any way the game could ever come out. It just doesn't make any sense. So a lot of people are very frustrated. A lot of people are kind of wondering if this is dead in the water. Sony acted like it is not canceled. It's just part of normal business, but they didn't really say it's not canceled. They didn't really say it is canceled. It just seems like they are kind of running away from it right now. It is worth noting that when the subject of Knights of the Old Republic remake came up a while ago in an Embracer Group, I believe it was an investors call, they just declined to comment on it and seemed frustrated and didn't want to talk about it. Now, that doesn't say that the game is not happening, but it also doesn't say anything good. I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but usually what companies do is this big thing called saving face. They do not want to talk about anything bad. They only really want to open their mouth when it's to say something good. Unless it's to blame the fans when it comes to a movie or something, to pass blame off. They don't really want to say like, hey, our game didn't sell well, or hey, our product didn't sell well, or hey, we messed up. They really don't want to do that. And why don't they want to do that? Well, getting sued is one of those reasons. And I'm going to be honest with you, I kind of think they deserve a little bit to get sued, because they straight up promised people, they did promise people in their trailer for KOTOR 2 for the Switch that they were going to be bringing content from, the PC that was fan developed, that was cut content that had been reinserted into the game. They were going to be bringing that to the Switch version at a later date. So guess what? When you promise that before your game comes out, there's going to be a lot of people who buy your game based on that promise. Now, I understand that in the comments, whenever I say that, people say, well, Jay, you should never buy anything based on a promise. You should only buy it based on what you can see. But here's the thing. The physical edition of that game was limited. It was limited edition. It was through limited run. So there were a lot of people who bought that physical edition specifically because it was a limited version that you could only get. Like, it wasn't something you could wait and get later unless you wanted to pay more on eBay, is essentially what I'm trying to say. So there are people who put money into it for that. And then there are also people who saw the history of Aspyr. They saw the history of the good work that they had done, bringing Star Wars content to modern platforms through ports and all kinds of other official work that they've done. And they said, well, this isn't just a promise, this is something fulfillable because they have a history of doing a good job. They never actually tell you most of this stuff. It just doesn't materialize. But we did get a full-on cancellation of that DLC a while back, and now a lawsuit has come out of it because people are saying, hey, look, I bought this game because you said this content would be accessible to me. You said that you would do this thing, you promised, and you didn't. That is false advertising. This comes off as a move to just run away and hide and basically just delete everything around the game and hope people forget about it. I don't know why they thought people would, though, because at the end of the day, this is an industry where, at the very least, gaming journalists are always watching for the next thing to talk about. This is an industry where articles and videos are made about gun rebalances in Call of Duty and Halo. You know, like, people are vigilant for stuff. People are vigilant for screw-ups. People are vigilant for changes in the wind when it comes to games they're looking forward to. People are watching for stuff. So it doesn't really make sense to me that they would just think that people wouldn't notice. I just don't really understand it at all. I don't understand how they thought people would just kind of have no idea that this was happening. It is just a mess, and I'm interested to hear what you think about it, because I think that even though Sony has a ton of great exclusive games, I don't think even with their catalog of good stuff that they would fully cancel this game. Maybe they would, but the reason I don't think that they would is because it would be such a bad look. This was a game that people had been wanting for a very, very long time, to see some kind of remake, remaster, some kind of modern day reinterpretation, whatever, of Knights 1. Now, how it's going to turn out, even if it does materialize, I don't know. I've always been worried about the comments on supposedly modernizing, the game, and a lot of people talking about how the combat system they thought was going to be more modern and not really turn-based and stuff anymore. That works for some games, like Final Fantasy VII Remake. Other games and movies, when they try to modernize and fit in with the modern gaming atmosphere, you can easily screw up what made the game so special. So that was always a concern. But with the way it's going right now, it's not something we're going to have to worry about for a long time, because they're just not talking about it. They won't say anything about it, and it's just kind of scrubbed from the internet now. So let me know what you think in the comments down below. I'm interested to hear your thoughts. This is just kind of a real situation of shitting the bed when it comes to, they clearly announced this way before they should have and had a lot of faith in what was being made, and I don't know what happened here, but it's not a good look. So as I'm sure you can tell, this is an awful lot of mistakes to make, an awful lot of missteps that apparently led to Aspyr being pulled off of this project, it eventually ending up with Saber Interactive, and then going radio silent for over a year, with questions about it being borderline met with almost hostility or just being ignored. It's frustrating to watch, and it doesn't really inspire a lot of faith in this remake for anyone. I think it's just been a bad look. Is it fair to hold Saber Interactive responsible for what Aspyr did? I mean, I think that's up to you. I would say probably not. But at the same time, with this still being under Embracer and, kind of at least having been under Embracer and having been dealing with all these issues, and then switching studios entirely, with people coming on, leaving the project during that time, basically a restart entirely. It's just a frustrating situation to watch, where everything around Knights of the Old Republic as a brand, other than just Star Wars The Old Republic still existing, doing its thing, pleasing its players as an MMO, it feels like everything around KOTOR in general has been one screw up after another, essentially since 2021, leading all the way to the modern day, where a few days ago, as of recording this, there was some confirmation that it is allegedly still in development. That said, whether you choose to believe it'll come out or not, or what you think it'll come out as, totally up to you. I just think that this is kind of it's an eye-opening thing to look at. It's a very eye-opening to see how badly things have been handled around these games, and it doesn't look good. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. I'm always interested to hear that. If you want to leave a like, subscribe, or follow this channel, whatever platform you're on, I do appreciate that as always. Thank you, as always, for answering the question of the day, commenting, telling me your thoughts in general. I like reading those. I did want to say real quick before I close out, we have our own store, cosmobunny.shop, where if you want to support our channel, you can get coasters, keychains, trays, and more from recycled paper, basically from manga, magazines, comic books, etc., things that are unable to be sold because they're damaged. we take those things, we actually give them new life, we transform them through a new medium into new art, and we recycle the rest of that paper and make sure it does not end up in landfills, actually going in the recycling. So it's something that we like to do to kind of give new life to something, give back, and it helps support our channel quite a bit. I appreciate you. Everything's going to be in the description down below as always. Have a fantastic day and stay shui.